Hey everybody, welcome back to Fantasy Valley. This is the very last video of the Asian part of the park, and I guess you could say that we've saved the best for last since I'm gonna be working on this station in this video. And also buckle up and strap in for a super long and detailed video in a sense, because this is just one building, but 4 hours worth of gameplay. Which means that this station building is just about everything that's gonna happen today. I will add a bit of detail around it, but it's really the biggest thing that's gonna happen. And it's something that turned out to be super time consuming, even more than I expected beforehand, which is true for much of this series. By the way, I don't want to talk about this too much, but this series is gonna take a long time. I might very well actually extend this into post-release Planet Coaster dates, which I don't want to do. I really want to start a new series once the game is actually released, just because that's a handy thing to do in this case. But I'll probably, whatever I'm gonna do at that time, I will continue Fantasy Valley because I really want to finish that park. Just something to keep in mind. I'm not gonna reach any kind of deadline that I'm making for this because I want to make this park pretty rather than finishing it on time, and I just don't want to hesitate and get things done as quickly as I can and sacrifice the quality of the park for that. So yeah, things might take a long time. It might take quite a number of episodes in one area of the park. But in the end, for me, the end result of the park is the most important thing, and that's why I'll be doing things that way. Just a reminder and something to keep in the back of my head. Anyway, I should probably talk about the station for a little bit and also actually, well, give some good arguments as to why it's gonna take 4 hours to build this entire thing, because that's an enormous amount of time for just one building, and it's not even gonna be that big. Basically, this is the station of the ride, and for that reason I wanted it to be the prettiest building. Whether that's something that actually I succeeded in, I'll leave that up to you, but it's something that I wanted to do for myself, and I wanted to make this the building with the largest amount of detail, and it's also of course the building at the end of the area, so I've had a lot of time to experiment with other kinds of things, and it's really where all of the different little tests and everything that I did throughout all of the other buildings come together. The basic shape of the building is very simple. We've got one layer, which is going to be the station platform area, which is going to be the roof that sits just above where the guests are going to enter the coaster. Then there's a roof layer beneath that, because I do want to work with some stacked roofs in a Chinese temple kind of sense, since the station platform is already raised up quite a bit, so we have those two stacked roofs which will give the overall shape of the building. But aside from that, I also wanted to have the middle part of the building come out a bit higher than the sides to really create a symmetrical building up toward the center of the building kind of shape to it, which might not make as much sense as I'm saying it right now, but it definitely will in the future. And all the way in the center of the building there is one big spire roof, which is the one that I just finished. And over here I had to divide the roofs into different kinds of sections, since we'll be working with different sizes of roofs for the different heights that I wanted to get at the station. It's not the easiest way to do things, and it was definitely very time consuming, because I had to have like different types of roofs for every time that I wanted to make a roof over the station. But in the end I am really happy with how it turned out, and it's really the only way that I could do things the way that I really wanted to do them. And what's also pretty notable about these roofs, and makes them stand out from all of the roofs that I've made so far in this entire area, is the fact that I put the white blocks on the side of the roofs. And whether it's Japanese or Chinese or Korean architecture, I'm not too much of an expert on it, but you always have these corner blocks on the side where either two roofs come together on a curving corner, or either just a regular gable roof has some kind of blocks at the end of it. And you see a lot of these things, but I don't really have them featured as much in the roofs. I have them in all of the roofs, which is well, really just the blocks that you see on the corner of the roofs, but they don't really stick out from the building. They are usually black, just like the other part of the roof is black, or whatever color the roof has, and I never really went into decorating the corner blocks as much. And that's something that I wanted to do right here. So many of the pieces that you see me placing around here, especially these pillars, but also the different decorational walls that I placed on top of the roof and on the side of the gables, are part of those decoration blocks that I wanted to put on the side. And what's especially interesting about them, I'm not sure if my theory here is correct, but I feel it's a very Korean kind of addition. I haven't been able to find any Chinese buildings that have this very distinct white color on the side of the roofs, whereas the rest of the roof is very dark and black, and it's not really something that you see on Japanese buildings much either. At least so far I haven't really been able to find examples of it. So I feel it's a super Korean kind of thing, and in that sense it's gonna be a bit of a mixture-ish building, because color-wise it has a bit of a Japanese color scheme, despite some of the red tones that I'll be adding into it. It has a very Chinese-inspired kind of roof shape and overall build-up of the building, but then some details feel a bit Korean to me as well. It's really a mixture of all the kinds of different things that the area is about, in a sense. And most of all, the roof looks really fancy, I think, with having the different colors and bringing out the certain details of it. So that's also a reason why I wanted to make it the way that I'm making it right now. So adding the bottom roof, which is just a roof with corners on the side, because I had to make this a roof which does stand out from the building quite a bit and is very visible and really gives you that two-layered roof structure into the building, but I had to make it very small since it was not supposed to conflict with the path that I had going through the floor there, and it had to be quite small, compact, as to not block too much of the view of the walls, which I'll have in the future as well. So I just opted for the very small, very gentle corner roofs here, and also it'll help in the future to create a small gallery at the bottom of the building on the base floor, which will look pretty fancy as well. But now we're getting into the real detailing of the building and the good stuff on the walls and on the pillars and that kind of stuff. I was just experimenting a bit with the different pieces that I could use in this case, but the basic structure of the building is really very simple. The top floor is all about the pillars. I won't be filling this in with any walls whatsoever. For one, because I think it looks pretty good, but also, of course, this is a station and I don't want to have walls right in the middle of the station. I could have maybe enclosed it a bit more, but the real dark ride part of this coaster will be in the queue, which... I didn't say anything about that yet. The queue is going to be all the way inside. I'm not sure when I'm going to work on it yet, but the queue is really going to be part of the experience and part of the interior part of the ride. But yeah, that's going to be inside, but the station itself is very open. So I wanted to use pillars on this floor here. Get a bunch of different pillars in, different heights and different kind of details. But generally, they're quite similar. And over here, I had to find a way to support the tower in the front. And I found a picture of a Chinese building which just has pillars floating, like to support the roof, but after they actually reach the balcony they just end there, which is a thing that you see on many of these Chinese buildings. So I figured, alright, I could do something like that. So I wanted to make a couple of very simple pillars to place in here, just to keep the roof levitating, but not really going down to the floor to actually support themselves. So they're really being held up by horizontal brackets in the end. And so these are just these pillars, quite simple, with a future balcony in the middle of them to give a bit of a shape to the roof front. And then the top part of the front facade, at least most of it is more or less finished. Still had to add a couple of things here and there. I actually wanted to make this building out of stone instead of stucco, which I have a lot already, and I'm not too sure how much I really like it, but I'm quite happy actually with how the textures of the stone and the roofs work out over here, and it makes it very distinct from the Japanese look that I have going on in many of these buildings, since Japanese buildings just don't usually have this combination of stone and roofs in this sense. And the same goes for the bottom floor, though I will be decorating that a lot more, so you won't end up seeing a lot of this stone. And on the base floor, I wanted to add a small gallery of pillars. It was a bit of a puzzle to actually get these in the way that I was looking for, since the shape of the building is pretty awkward. It's not a perfect square, and it has those things sticking out on the side, which I do like the shape, it just makes it a bit annoying to work with. But this is going to be the basic pillar gallery that we have going on at the base floor. Very simple, but it does provide a nicer entry into the building. I think it makes it a bit more like it's part of the area around it, which you don't really see yet, but you will see at the end of the video when all the foliage comes in and things like that. It just makes the building a bit more open than just a closed facade in a sense. And also something to keep in mind is that at this time I wasn't really keeping it in mind yet, but I quickly wanted to open it up so that we could actually have the queue enter from the front of the building. You can see the exit path actually curving around the station building, and I'll add some rocks and some walls to actually support that. But the queue entrance is actually going to be at the front here, and you're going to walk straight into the building on the bottom floor here, get into a winding inside kind of queue, and come back all the way at the end of the station at the other side from where we're looking at right now. And yeah, that's basically how the queue is gonna work. Not sure how well that's gonna actually work, but it's an idea that I just wanted to try, because theme park wise it seems like a really cool way to make the queue really part of the experience and very immersive. And also I had some space problems. There is no other way to really connect a queue to the paths here. So this was really my last resort that hopefully would work out pretty well. And next thing that I wanted to do is fill in the open windows. Very similar to the windows that I made earlier, but I made that same texture and figured, well, I've already done that, so that wouldn't be very original now, would it? And ended up making it out of some new pieces, out of the wooden railings, which is not as detailed, but I'm still really happy with how it turned out. It really has that Chinese sort of texture to it. Of course it's not precise, and you can't actually get the very specific and actually very meaningful patterns in that I would love to see, but especially from a distance I think it gets the job done pretty well. So those make up the windows and the door of the base floor, and later on I'll be filling that in with the queue and actually make it a very proper station. But before that, I thought it was time to finish off this rocky mountain over here. And I was actually struggling with this quite a bit. You don't actually see me struggling with it, but for a while I was wanting to make this rock mountain very fake. As in, you may have seen, for example, if you have these rocky facades at Disney, they just look like rocks from the front, but at the back there's actually this big structure of beams and like construction to actually keep it up. Kind of like a billboard has similar constructions at the back, and it's something like this which I wanted to try over here quite a while, since the entire back part of this, the entire coaster and area around it, is going to be all backstage area, which is kind of a controversial thing, but I'll get back to that later. But basically for a while I was figuring here, yeah, I could actually turn this into a bit of a construction to realistically hold up the fake rockwork that we have going on here. I just couldn't really get it to look right. Like, you're looking at it right now and it's just a big mess, and with the texture of the in-game thing, the in-game rocks terraforming in the back, it's just a chaotic blur of random stuff all over the place. So I figured in the end it's probably just best to fill it up with rocks, so that's why I ended up doing. I gave up on that idea and I just made it rocks instead. So that's why the entire thing kind of is not going to fit in as well with the rest of the backstage area, because I will have a lot of grey boxes and transfer track and like mechanical stuff going on at the back. I might actually put an access road across the map as well. Just for a realistic sense, there's usually in a theme park a road around the park with all the maintenance and backstage things that they need to be connected. And I'm not sure if I'm gonna do that kind of thing, but it's that which I want to leave space and some realistic boxes for. But yeah, in the end, that part of the Rocky Mountain is gonna be rocks, but you'll see that later on. Same goes, by the way, for all of the backstage stuff. I'll be doing that off screen. You won't be seeing it in here, but I will definitely show off what it looks like. It's just not as interesting, and it's pretty time consuming to get all of that in. And I'd rather focus on some Asian stone lanterns and stone railings, which I'm doing right now. I was actually wanting to make some stone lanterns for a super long time. I just didn't know how to make them, and I didn't even know it yet when I was building this thing, as you might be able to tell from the fact that I've been trying so many different things and half of them didn't really work out. But I really wanted to get some stone lanterns in here, so I figured, you know, why not? Let's just try it and see what it's gonna look like in the end. And while I'm not too happy with these things, I think they're good enough to get them in there just for the idea of this being the Asian area. and having some stone lanterns around here. I'm gonna actually copy them around a little bit, put them in the more Japanese area, put them in the gardens that I have. Whatever is gonna work out in the end, but I'm not really too sure about that. I just wanna see if I can get these things in a little bit more, because now that I actually have them, they might not be the best, but they're a nice way to reinforce the theme a little bit. Anyway, the almost last thing that I wanted to do here is provide some support for the exit path, because it's super unsupported. It does have the in-game support, but we all know that's not really going to work out with this theme, and I wanted to make a kind of a Chinese wall-like castle-ish texture wall around it. It's just gonna have rocks on the other side because I was too lazy to finish the other side with this kind of wall thing, since it's quite a hassle to get done. But I think it looks a bit better from this side. It fits in a bit more with the station building and the overall surrounding the gardens that we're gonna have on this side. So we have a wall here. It's not quite the Great Wall of China, which I am sorry, there were quite a few people who suggested me building a Great Wall of China-like structure. It's just not something that I can see fitting into this park in any kind of way. It's just something that, if I would build it, would be super large and would be the same for much of the structure, and there's just no way that I can fit it into any of my plans that I had. So that ended up not happening, but it's a similar kind of thing, in a sense. At least we have some kind of wall action going on here. And finally, the rockwork and the foliage, of course, which I do like to do last, since it is quite a lag factor here, especially the trees and many of the smaller bushes that I'll be placing, which also means that I'll keep much of the park very empty when it comes to the foliage. I'll really just fill in most of the trees at the end, which really gives you an idea of what the park is going to look like. But for now, I'll really just focus on the areas themselves, and once that's all done, get into really connecting them all with a lot of the forests that I will probably want to have in the end. But first, we also need a staircase into the Southeast Asian area. I was trying to make this out of real paths for a while, but they were just not cooperating. It's definitely possible, and it didn't actually look that bad. The only problem is, it would actually have different angles of stairs throughout the stairs, because you can't actually get them to perfectly connect with the height that you'd need to get one smooth pair of stairs. And that's what I did want to have, so just for the ease of making things more perfect, and I guess because I'm too big of a perfectionist, they're going to be made out of roof pieces, which means more control over the way that the staircase looks, but it also means that it's not going to be functional. So I will have to connect to the Southeast Asian area in some kind of other way. It's not too big of an issue, since guests will have to go to this section of the park anyway, since if they want to ride the coaster or leave the coaster, they're going to have to use these paths. It just means that the staircase, which is at the bottom of the station, isn't actually going to be used, which is kind of a shame, but I do like the way that it looks right now, so it's a double-edged sword. Very final couple of things that I wanted to add around here, by the way. The standard stuff, some pots and some planters and some barrels and benches, the very small finishing touches that you want to add right after everything else is done. And that is just about the end of the Asian area. Now, like I said, I will be finishing it off a little bit off screen and adding some backstage areas, but this is really it for Asia. And the next time that I'll see you guys, I'll be starting work on Europe, which is going to be quite strange. I'll be skipping over Southeast Asia and Arabia for now, but I'll see how Europe is going to work out. So thank you guys for watching this video and staying throughout the Asian area, and I hope to see you guys again in the European part.